Oh no.
Pick up.
Hot mess.
See how this? Yeah.
With both sides.
Oh.
No.
Butter? Yeah. Nailed it. Good morning, everybody. Welcome to Morning Startup. I'm Erin. I'm one of the organisers of Morning Startup, and next to me I have...
Nina. I'm Nina. I think I need to turn it on. Hi.
You passed the first test. So, Morning Startup is organised by founders for founders. So, alongside Nina and myself, we have the amazing Dave, who is pointing at his phone. Don't forget to do Jack's message.
Yes.
Okay, all right. Do you want to pull that up while I'm padding quietly?
Yeah, it's fine. I think it's at a later point. Yeah.
On Slack. All right, so as you can see, we're a vibrant community and we get lots of messages and shout-outs from the startup community of Western Australia. So also alongside us we have Dave, who's got to duck out in pure founder glory because he's got a board meeting. And unfortunately, Scott can't join us this morning as he's unwell. I believe he's watching the live stream. So hi, Scott. Hope you're feeling better soon. The chairs are arranged perfectly. Dave lined them up.
Yes, it's perfect.
Look at it. It's beautiful.
Yes, here there is one here.
Oh, it is there.
It's very nice and warm.
Yeah.
Just for you.
So one of the things about Morning Startup is our coffee. Our coffees are sponsored. So if you haven't already grabbed a coffee, like Dave, pop down to Joey Zaza's, say you're from Morning Startup, and enjoy.
Yeah, like we are here every 2 weeks, will rain, hail or shine. It's been 13 years, I want to say 17, but it's been 13 years, and we have over 7,000 members. It's really exciting.
Whoop. So who's new to Morning Startup who hasn't been here for a while? Show of hands. Welcome. Excited.
Welcome.
Great to have you here. So one of the things that we do every week, every fortnight at Morning Startup is Shameless plugs and announcements. So this is in exact founder glory, your time to shine. Give us your pitch. Tell us what you're looking for from the startup community. Who wants to get this party started?
Stand up, guys. Okay, Alex, Roland, Steve. We are the founders of Trust Engine, and we are a trust-based matching platform predominantly used in coaching, mentoring, grad and apprenticeship programs, and we've also been utilised in recruitment.
We're in the launch phase and early growth phase. We've had 3 client pilot programs and about 150 users through the platform so far. So if any of this sounds interesting to you or anyone you know, then we'd love to have a chat. Thanks.
Awesome. That is exactly how it's done. Who else would like to give a shameless plug or announcement?
I'll take a walk in my hot shoes.
Fantastic.
Thank you. Hi, I'm Russell, the founder and CEO of Pod2. We are a podcast hosting and radio show distribution company. We've just finished EDC Las Vegas, where we recorded 7 stages of DJs. That's 32 DJs per day. That's 32 recordings per hour. And we were able to save that company up to 12 hours worth of editing. We were able to get the process down to 20 minutes. So as soon as the DJ got off stage, we had that all cut and ready for them in their Dropbox. So yeah, if you're a podcaster or if you know anyone that's in the media industry that needs to save time on editing or production, give them my email address, russell@pod2.com.
That's awesome. And Russell is here as well every 2 weeks. So do you have this?
Hi everybody, my name's Matt Brown from Unearthed Your Potential with Alison E. We believe that humans are having to go extremely fast today to keep up with the ever faster and faster computers. So we use mindfulness-based techniques to help people unlock their potential and really live inspired lives. We're in the early stages, but we have delivered a number of programs in a global pharmaceutical company where we've had great results, especially with leadership development and resilience.
Awesome.
Thank you. We have 2 more.
Hi everyone, this is Kamal. My company is Guy Plus. So I would like to share one of the projects I'm doing is SI, Sustainable Intelligence, instead of AI. So at Guy Plus we integrate things. So if you have any interest on SI, Sustainable Intelligence, please come and visit me. Thank you.
Thank you. And we have 1 more.
Hi everyone, my name is Louise Byrne. I'm the Director of EHQ Coaching and Consulting. So we offer a variety of services, but one of them is virtual Chief People Officer services for scale-ups and SMEs. We also do a lot of work with specialist programs in the leadership development space, so I'd be keen to connect with a few of us and hear where there's some synergies.
What a beautiful time to today's presentation.
Yes, Erin's going to share with us. Alrighty, we also have 1 more plugin. CyberVest Summit is on next week at the Pan Pacific, so May 28th and 29th. It's already there. Cyber experts come together to help business leaders navigate the cybersecurity space. So you're all invited.
And most importantly, because Morning Startup is a magical community, the Morning Startup crew, so that includes everyone in this room and those watching on live stream, can access discounted tickets across the 2 days for $500. They just need to get in touch with Jack from Ammo, and he'll be able to connect you at the Cybersecurity Hub.
Yeah, and you can also message us on Slack, and we will direct you to Jack.
Oh, yep, I've got this mastered. And for those who had a bit of a struggle to get out of bed this morning.
No, not me.
Right, so of course Nina was a morning person and had no issues rocking in at 7:30. So for those of you who are getting out of bed early in the morning is not your jam, or you also love a vino or a beer, we also meet on the first Wednesday every month at other side of nowhere, so very different vibe.
Yeah, there's drinks, pizza. It's really fun. Then, thanks to Jitsi, we get to do this. And live stream is also thanks to perthvideo.com today. So Jitsi has like a bunch of different things that you can also have a look at. Awards, grants for all kinds of startups, from the beginning to actually big scale ups, which is really cool.
As we mentioned, perthvideo.com.au, do our live stream, and you can also, if you scan that QR code, all of the morning startups in recent years have been recorded. So we're building up an amazing library of different content relevant to the startup community. So marketing, sales, how to attract venture capital. If there's any of those things that are of interest to you, check out the library because we've got an amazing array of different content.
And subscribe to the Weird Growth podcast. So Emma Marketing, it's all about marketing basically. Like if you need any help with it, Emma is your. I always want to say person, but it's like a big personality marketing group. That's what I wanted to say.
All right, Glenn. So, yeah, you look like a deer in headlights. So Glenn has been around the Perth IT recruitment space for a long time and has been a long supporter of Morning Startup. And we often put him on the spot to give us a little short update on what's happening in the recruitment world. No, you got to live stream.
You have a microphone.
Okay, so I'll do 1 minute quick snapshot. So just did a post just quickly about when you're hiring, and I said watch out for the 3 Ds. I call it dribblers, dabblers, and deliverers. So when you're interviewing, just basically watch out for the people that talk a good game. Lots of jargon, they've just been on ChatGPT, they might have it running in the background when you're interviewing them. Be careful. Dabblers, they can talk a good game, but they haven't really delivered anything and can't substantiate what specifically they did, but they can tell you about lots of different things. And then finally, you've got the deliverers, right? So they're the people that they celebrate their failures more or as much as they celebrate the successes, right? You can peel back the onion on those. I really encourage you to focus your questions and listen for that and listen for the tells of people talking on that space. So 3 Ds, right? Dribblers, dabblers, deliverers. The deliverers are the top 20%.
Good to know.
Fantastic. And what do we have last? We have, if I've memorised this correctly, we're up to Keep Space.
Yes. The food that we're going to eat later, brought to you by Keep Space. So it's a free PL service. So if you have an e-commerce business, this is your place because they handle shipping and they also have different kind of tiers. So it doesn't matter if you're at the beginning or you have lots of sales, they can help you organize all of that, which is very cool.
And Purpose Ventures. So who in the room is VC ready? So ready to seek venture capital funding? Ooh. When you are ready for venture capital funding, Purpose Ventures is well established, so one of only a handful of West Australian funds. They do deals outside of Western Australia as well. But they're well known for investing in purpose-driven founders. So check them out if that's something that your business is ready for.
Yeah, and also they have education dinners every 3 months, I think, and they actually do share what they're asking for. So and kind of can help you become investment ready, which is very good.
Fantastic. So this beautiful venue that we're in at the moment, Space Cubed. So we're in Riff. Space Cube is part of a broader series of buildings across Western Australia. So if you're looking, and the eastern states as well. So if you're looking for a co-working space, check out Space Cubed. We're also, for anyone who hasn't subscribed, a great way to keep on top of what's happening in the West Australian innovation ecosystem. Sign up for Startup News, join Startup WA. So a lot of the funding that helps support organisations, volunteer organisations like Morning Startup, comes from the advocacy of the lovely people from Startup WA who advocate for our ecosystem. And Plus 8, you would have heard of, a few weeks ago, we had an overview of this year's program. So check them out.
Yeah. Is it time for you now? Oh, well.
Surprise!
Yeah. Well, we do have entrepreneurial development support as well. So a bunch of resources here. Scan this QR code to actually see it. But yeah, like, I don't know, like different programs, even like small investments, accelerate programs. Just have a look here. It's a great resource.
Fantastic. So it's not just what happens in Morning Startup every fortnight and at Founder Sundowner, particularly for people who are living and working in the regions. You can also connect with our community online. If you scan that QR code there, you can see we love a QR code. That will give you some of the contact details. We're really keen to encourage people to be active on our Slack group. So we'd love for you to post about what you're working on, any asks that you've got from the community. Feel free to pop them up there. And as you can see, we've got a number of different social channels as well.
Yeah, like we share photos, a bunch of photos and advice. It's like a nice safe space.
In 2 weeks' time, this I reckon is going to be a fiery one. I'm really looking forward to this one. So Maggie is a non-tech founder, and she's going to be sharing her experience of navigating the tech startup scene as a non-technical person who's new to this space. So it's going to be a bit of a fun, warts and all founder story, founder journey. I did joke and say I think we should split the room into two aisles. We'll have the developers on one side and then the non-technical people on the other, and maybe we can get a bit of a debate going.
Nah.
Where are you going to sit?
It's going to be really interesting, I think, because she probably has a really good perspective as well, and it's a very helpful one.
All right, so in Scott, who is with us in spirit, for those who know, one of the big parts of Morning Startup is dad jokes. So that is our formalities over.
Yeah, but there are no dad jokes. I am
Didn't
terrible
even
at
get a
telling
laugh.
jokes. No, like it's always just a moment of silence because it's like, oh.
We're going to have to come up with some new ones. If anyone's got any new dad jokes that we can slot in, please let us know.
I just realised that this is a joke, not an intro to a joke.
Oh, bless. All right, this is the awkward bit where Nina gets to introduce me.
Yeah, well, I met Erin last year, and she's just an amazing person, but also a huge force, and she does so many things so well. It's so... And you also have this huge experience before becoming a founder. So it's working with startups. She also has a consultancy. She also has a little farm. And then she has a travel startup as well. It's just really impressive. So whatever you have for us today, I'm going to go and take notes because it's really, really interesting.
Awesome. Thanks for the warm introduction. So the reason that I'm talking today, so sorry that you get so much of me, is we put a call out to the startup community a little while ago and asked, what's the thing that you want to hear about? So there were a few other topics that got a good show of hands, including bootstrapping. And we're going to be putting together a bootstrapping session in the next couple of weeks. Actually, no, I lied. September, I think. So what came out as part of that survey was that there was a lot of interest in organisational design, which is something that I do as part of my consulting business, which I don't normally talk about because I think most of us will know consulting is usually pretty boring. So before I dive into this, I'm really interested to get a feel for who's in the room and what our interest is in this topic. So first of all, who's just here, never heard of organisational design, and they're here for the free coffee? Totally okay. It is a safe space. Excellent, that's good. Who's started to dabble in organisational design? So they might have started drawing an org chart, might have started to think about some of the parts of their people journey. Who's in that kind of space? Yeah, awesome. And who's right in the thick of it? So you're deep in the trenches, you're wrestling with all kinds of thorny people type challenges. Excellent. Beautiful. Welcome. So hopefully you'll get something out of this. But the good news is, no matter where you are in your journey, you're in the right room. There's only one. So, I kind of feel like this graphic that we're looking at sums up a lot about organisational design, because I think a lot of us have worked in, I'm guessing most of us, if not all of us, have worked in organisations where the design hasn't worked. So we've worked in organisations that have high complexity, and that's really easy to default into when you're doing a startup, because you're kind of building the plane while you're flying it. So it's very easy to accidentally introduce complexity without realising. It's also really easy to introduce silos, because when we're also busy focused on our individual areas, so if you're the tech person, you're focused on your tech silo. If you're the marketing person, you're focused on your marketing silo. And then what tends to happen is bureaucracy can creep in really easily. So a lot of us have come from the corporate world, so it can be really easy to just kind of pick up the policy or the procedure that came from your major multinational that you used to work for and just drop it into your startup and go, yes, you'll be right, mate. And so you can kind of see how, even if you set out the best intentions, it can be really easy to start to move towards that kind of shape organisation. So where you end up with vibes-based decision-making, everyone's busy, they're not necessarily clear on what the right things are or what the priorities are. But the good news is that you can design your way out of it. So what is organisational design? I'm not going to give you a boring textbook definition. This is kind of my my take on it, which is just to kind of think about it as your people strategy. So you've probably been told you've got to have your marketing strategy, you've got to have your tech roadmap, you've got to have all of these other types of plans for your business. Organisational design is kind of like HR strategy. So what are all the bits and pieces that you need to think about in your business? And you can probably guess from the title of today's talk, I'm not a great fan of org charts. And so organisational design is not just who reports to who. It's thinking about what does your business actually need to be good at, because you can't be good at everything. What work actually needs to be done? So if you sat down and thought about it, what are all the things that your organisation needs to do? And then it's also thinking about how do we shape culture? What kind of culture does your organisation need to support your business strategy? How are you going to work together? And what kinds of teams do you need to make that possible? So hopefully, by the end of today, I'll convince you that organisational design is not just making org charts. And why do I care about this? Two things. First of all, burnout. So for those who haven't heard my story before, burnout's kind of a thing that I'm really passionate about. I have an autoimmune disease, so I can't work crazy long hours. So I'm really passionate about designing organisations that work for people who don't work 12, 14-hour days, 6, 7 days a week. The other thing, for those who know me, is I hate bureaucracy. I just have this whole thing where I'm really passionate about removing bureaucracy from organisations as well. So my two driving forces personally is thinking about designing organisations that discourage burnout and don't naturally gravitate towards bureaucracy. So as a founder, why should you care about organisational design? The most obvious thing is that people are expensive. So for most of you who have probably added up and looked at your salary forecast, it is the thing that keeps you up at night, thinking about paying people's salaries or paying your own salary. So getting the wrong hire, so the wrong person in the wrong spot, can absolutely burn your runway. Having a clear people strategy, so what are we going to do now, soon and later, builds trust with investors. It shows you that you know what you're doing. And what it helps do is, rather than building an organisation around a few key people, it helps you build your organisation with those people so that you can think about what the future looks like. It's kind of like the glue that holds together your tech team, your ops team, your marketing team. Your people strategy is the thing that wraps around all of that. So what are we looking for? We're looking for momentum without the mess. All right, so how do you actually do it? So to protect the innocent, I'm not going to talk about any of my consulting clients. I'm going to give two examples. So the first example is I'm going to talk about a few things from the self-guided walking and driving to a business that my husband and I run called Stories Unseen. I'm also going to give a few examples because I think it's something everyone can relate to. We also have a hobby farm in the wheat belt, and interestingly, we had to start a business called Wheat Belt Wanderlust, which is effectively a property management service. So we couldn't find somebody to clean the toilet, so we had to start a business to get that done. And what I'm going to be stepping through today is the 5 kind of steps that every time I come across these types of organisational design challenges, what are the steps that I go through, wearing my consulting hat, to get to a clearly defined people strategy. All right, so who can tell me what this thing on the left-hand side is? Anyone? All right, so this is from the 1950s, so we're kicking it old school. What this is called is a value stream map. And what this thing on the left-hand side does is each organisation will be slightly different, but what it describes is how your business actually makes money. Controversial opinion, but startups should probably make money. And what you can see here from the primary activities on the bottom is that this particular diagram is showing an organisation that is a product-based organisation. So they have things come in, they have things come out, they market them and they service them. So what's really interesting about this value chain is IT is not on this value chain. So to sit with that and think, because we hear a lot about different functions needing to be front and centre, but in this type of business, who makes money from products going in and products going out, IT is actually not one of their core capabilities. So I know there's a bit of like, what the? So when you think about what kind of structure or support this business needs, IT would be positioned as an enabler. It would not be something that drives this business. And the reason that this stuff is really important is because before you start designing a team, you've got to think through what are the steps in your organisation that takes a customer from, that's nice, to shut up and take my money. Because you want to put most of your energy, as much as possible, in that value chain. So the questions to ask yourself, thinking about your organisation, is, are we product-led? So is everything that we do in our business in aid of building a product and everything else just supports that? Are we sales-driven? Is our core capability, so the thing that we do above and beyond all else, is selling? The product can change, but we're a really good sales-driven organisation. Or are we obsessed with customer experience? So what we really do is our business model is that we create raving fans. So then we would have a service-driven business. So it's thinking quite deeply about what is the core thing that makes your business money. So most people think about organisations in boxes. So these, job roles, reporting lines, thinking in a very linear type way. What you can see from the diagram on the right-hand side is by starting with your value chain, you're starting to think about organisational design in 3 directions. You're thinking about it vertically, so that classic reporting lines, who makes what decisions. You're thinking horizontally in terms of how does work flow across teams. So the minute that we start doing reporting lines, we start thinking in silos. So then we've got to start thinking about what are the processes. So how is the work, so thinking about that value chain, how is it that your customer is going to move across the different silos in your organisation? And then directionally, where are we all headed, most importantly? So what is going to be the guiding principle that drives all of the people in your business? So I'm going to, as I promised, an example from some of my businesses. Stories Unseen. We have a completely... we have no humans in our process at all. So when someone buys a tour, they download the tour from our website or from our third party, download it to their device, and they're off and running. They never experience a human. So for us, in Stories Unseen, the thing that is most important is quality. So the most time and energy and people goes into testing, because in that market, one-star review can get us kicked off a platform. So there's lots of things that we don't do to enable us to be absolutely laser-focused on quality. And I'm sure you were just looking at that value chain and thinking, but Erin, there's stuff that we do that's really important. And here's a really good example. So the farm, which I touched on, what you can see on the left-hand side is what people see externally. So lots of sunsets, canola selfies, influencers taking photos. But then there's also what happens behind the scenes. So if we sat down and thought about all the things that we need to do, it's laundry, setting up the retic, and convincing someone to empty the bin. So how do you avoid that whole, it's not my job? Who's heard that before? It's not my job. So that whole it's not my job thing, how do we actually avoid it? So wearing my consulting hat, there's things that don't sit in job titles, there's things that don't sit in org charts, they're not on pitch decks, you know, the real work that we all do at midnight. How do you surface that type of work? So with startups, our temptation is to design around roles. So what's our finance person doing? What's our marketing person doing? What is our admin person doing? But when I work with large organisations, what I use is a thing called the jobs to be done framework. I think we've got an experienced designer in the room who knows exactly what this is. But it's taking a customer framework and applying it internally, and it asks 3 questions, which is, what are the functional things that need to be done? So what are the obvious things that keep the lights on? But secondly, and it's really important for organisations that have a strong customer service focus, is what are the emotional jobs that need to be done? So, you know, we focus so much on the really kind of, you know, moving through quite obvious jobs. What are the emotional jobs that need to be done? Thinking about those. And some would argue, most importantly, what are the social jobs that need to be done? So somebody's got to organise the staff Christmas party. Someone has got to, you know, think about culture and those types of things in your organisation. So it's thinking about it from those 3 lenses of social, emotional and functional. Don't just think about the boring stuff. So what if you've done this? Has anyone done this before? Sat down and wrote a list of everything their organisation does? Excellent. Top of the class. How long was it? Was it surprisingly long? Yeah. And so when I work with large corporates, I use a framework called APQC. Without delving into it in too much detail, it's effectively a benchmarked thing globally that just tells you what a typical organisation of that shape does. Surprisingly, ChatGPT does an amazing job at the moment too. So if you bang in there, you know, I have a product-based organisation, what types of functions or processes would this organisation do? It'll give you a list. And what that starts to do is thinking about, in your startup, what are the things that you're not doing that you should be doing? And also thinking about other things that you're doing that you just shouldn't be doing because it's not right for the type of business that you've got. But most importantly, once you can see the work, that's when you can organise it. You'll start to see duplication, you'll start to see gaps, you'll start to see overlaps. So having that list, as scary as it might be, is a really important way to start to get your head around your people strategy. Superpowers. So as I mentioned, that list is pretty scary, it's pretty long, and you can't be good at everything on that list. So thinking about that value chain that we spoke about earlier, if you can pick one superpower, what would it be? And it's not necessarily being invisible. It's thinking about what is it that is going to set your business apart? What is the one thing that your people need to be exceptional at? So using an example of the farm again, because I think it's something that most of us can picture. So it's called May the Farm, and we have sheep seasonally, but we're not farmers. So what it is it's a hospitality business where we sell experiences. So, and when we think about it that way, what core capability we need is quite different. So our core capability is actually taking nice photos of sunsets and making charcuterie boards. It's also doing a crap ton of laundry. So it's thinking about in your organisation. This one here is our beta testing team. So there's about 25 people that we take out on some of our tours to get feedback. So that's for Stories Unseen. So once you've picked out your superpower, it's then creating a conversation about what are the things that we're just going to do just good enough, and what do we mean by just good enough? So for those who have spent a long time in software development, who's seen this, the CMMI model? Yep, welcome, excellent. Glad there's a few of us in the room. This then creates a conversation about it's okay to be a bit crap. What this does is it says, we're going to be really good over here. We're a startup, we've got a scarce amount of resources. So for these other processes and things that we do, it's okay. And what do we agree? When we say it's okay to be a bit average, mediocre, what do we mean by that? So using these models as a way to get alignment with teams about the things that we're just going to sneak by on. All right, my favourite. I was going to tell you I've just made a whole pile of fun about organisational charts. Now I'm going to talk about them. So one of the things that's really interesting about org charts is when I go into organisations, they tell a story. They're really fascinating, if you're a nerd like me. And so it's thinking about what shouldn't an organisational chart be. So this is where most organisations get stuck. They get a whiteboard and they draw an organisational chart, and then they draw another organisational chart, and then they draw another organisational chart, and wonder why they can't get it perfect. Why is that? Because there's no perfect organisational structure. They all suck in some kind of magical way. And so the question is really thinking about what is the structure, like what is the logic behind how your organisation wants to work together. So it's not thinking about this person reports to this person who reports to this person. It's thinking about in the context of how are we going to be organised? Are we going to be organised in silos? Are we going to be organised in product teams? It's not a hierarchy of feelings. It's not your family tree. Who's hired family? All right. So it's thinking about there is no perfect model. So there's a few different options that you've got. Product driven, I think everyone talks about the Spotify model. So if you're not familiar with it, check it out. It's quite an established model. Works for some organisations, doesn't work for everybody, depending on what you're doing. Project driven. So for example, Stories Unseen, completely project driven business. So we only have core staff, and everything that we do is project-based. So we'll scale up and scale down every time that we enter a new market or build a new tour. So it's thinking about what kind of cadence, so what kind of rhythm does your business have? And so you can see on the right-hand side, there's some quite interesting ones out there. I do like an amoeba. Kind of suggests it'll never die. It's got a bit of longevity to it. I haven't got time to delve into all of these today, but I do encourage you to think about some of the different organisational options that are out there rather than just defaulting to a functional or a matrix structure. The real test, so how do you know if you've got it right? So what you want to do is once you've picked one, maybe it's a mini factory, maybe it's a squad, and sort of mapped out not the people, but kind of the core kind of capabilities or things that these people would do. You then test it. So think about this model that I've come up with or looked at. Would it work if our structure was only 3 people? Would it work if it was 30? Would it work if it was 3,000? The big test, if we went viral overnight, would this structure still work? And then the last test is if we ran out of runway, with this organisational structure, how would it contract? So really think about and test the logic of the structure that you've chosen. So thinking about, I'm working with an organisation at the moment who in any year can have between 15 million and 350 million. So think about an organisational structure that can expand and contract with that volume, it is possible. All right, you're doing well. This is the rapid fire truth bomb part of today. So it's the last part of the theory, I promise. So what we're looking at here is the talent life cycle. So we often go crap, got a deal, got to get some people in, panic. But when you think about journey, so how do we get people? It shouldn't be running to lovely people like Glenn and saying, hey Glenn, I need a developer next week. He'll probably smile and try and help you because he's a lovely person. But you should be planning a lot further out than I need a developer next week. So first, my encouragement to you is when you think about getting people is to hire intentionally. And so there's two things that you want to think about, two C words. None of them are 4 letters, I promise. The first one is capability. So remember that long list of things that we wrote before about what are all the things our organisation needs to do? What are the capabilities that we need? What are the skills that we need in our organisation? And then it's to think about capacity. So how much of each of these skills do we need? And then, if you're a nerd like me and you've put it in a spreadsheet, you'll end up with some really weird numbers. So I need 2.5 of a customer service person. I need 0.4 of a project manager. So what you need to think about when you're putting together what capability you need and what capacity, so how much of a fraction, is to think about, don't naturally then club them together, because what you end up with is what I call unicorn roles. So you'll go to market with someone who they need to be able to clean the fridge, order the milk, code, and also keep the lights on. No joke. Actually, I think there's a unicorn in the room. Is really think about when you end up with these weird fractions as a startup, where you're going to get them. So that's where think about, is there a fractional person that you can bring into your organisation? Is it a full-time role? Is it a part-time role? Is it something you can outsource? So avoid the temptation when you've put together your maths to be really intentional about how you're going to get those skills in. So design roles that people can actually do and want to do and will bring them joy. I did tell you, Glenn, I was going to hit you up a lot. The next one is, as I touched on earlier, people are expensive. And so talking to your friendly local recruiters will give you a proper estimate as to how much people cost in today's market. So some of the other bigger recruiters do salary surveys, but that data is not always current. So when you're thinking about your people plans, think early about how much people cost, not just their salary, but also their on costs as well, and do the maths. And when you rock up and talk to your VCs, they'll be really impressed by the level of detail that you've got. My other truth bomb is titles are not snacks. Do not hand them out willy-nilly. So if you are looking to recruit a finance person, don't make them the CFO unless they are a qualified CFO. If they're an accountant, call them an accountant and leave it at that. You don't have to hand out all of the C-suite titles early on in your journey, because otherwise, as you get into your later stages, it can be really difficult and awkward to say, oh, can I have that CFO title back? I've run out of time today to talk about the time that I hired my husband, fired my husband, and rehired him again. But happy to... He's a CFO, that's why I'm making fun of CFOs. I'm happy to share that story over a glass of wine. The other thing when you're thinking about these capacity and capability plans is think about ratios. So coming back to your value chain and how your business makes money, what is the right ratio of developers to customer service to salespeople for your business? So have a good look at each stage and go, have I got the right ratio? The other check to think about at just a really cerebral level is, have I got the right level of doers to managers? So particularly in those early stage journeys, you would typically have a lot more doers and a lot fewer managers. So making sure that that sort of top level ratio makes sense for you. Onboarding, I won't talk about it in any great detail, but please do it. It's not just a Canva doc. Do it properly. Diversity, again, that's a whole talk in itself, but avoid the temptation to hire people like you, because otherwise you'll end up with a whole organisation of people like you, and you don't want a whole organisation of people like me. Don't throw perks at people or process problems. So fun story here, KFC. Hilarious, right? I was working in Malaysia back in the day, and we had the genius idea that because we had an engagement problem, we would offer employees shares. And we would do an employee share plan. It doesn't work in Malaysian culture for a whole pile of reasons. What we found out is the best way to motivate staff was to give them family KFC vouchers. So be really mindful and think about the way that you incentivise people, because it might not be pizzas and beer taps. Letting go, sad, but exit should be part of your strategy. So the people who join you on your startup journey might not necessarily be the people who join you on your scale-up journey. So start having conversations early and often about who is joining, who is leaving, what does that look like, so that you can plan for it and prepare for it and bake it into everything that you do. And the other part is it's not the apprentice. So you cannot just go, you're fired. For the HR professionals in the room, they will tell you that there's a whole pile of legal considerations to getting the right people in the right place. So I will encourage you to think about getting the right people is a lot more than just putting in a beer keg and putting in a foosball league. So that sounded like a neat, tidy process, didn't it? It sounded really linear and tidy. It's not like that in the real world. So, for example, the farm. So I touched on cleaning before. We did a whole pile of numbers, strategy, plans, and went, cool, we're going to hire some cleaners. Awesome. Crickets. You cannot get a cleaner in the central wheat belt. That's just not a thing. So what we ended up doing was creating hybrid roles, which are more expensive, but it's a combined gardener cleaner role to make them more attractive. And we specifically target women in their late 50s, early 60s who are semi-retired. What that then did is it completely changed the way that we run the farm. Our whole operations is run around the availability of these magical people. So really think about, you get to the end, you go, yep, that's nice. And then as you get feedback, it can completely cycle through and change your business strategy. So my encouragement to you is hopefully you're now thinking of your organisations as a living, breathing, evolving system, and you're going to go back to your workplaces and your offices and think about how you can break your org chart and start again thinking about it as a system. So that's me. Thank you very much for listening to me rant about organisational design, one of my passion topics. And my lovely co-organiser, Nina, is going to... we've got time for questions.
Yes, we do. That was really good, by the way. I took a lot of notes and I'm going to share them. Yes. Thank you. Do we have any questions? Oh, yes, we do. I'm coming. Where's my phone?
Yeah. There's quite an interesting trend among in sort of what we call amorphous organisations. So project-type teams work very well in that because you can sort of aggregate and so on. But you solve the, in the mainstream, there are two big problems, position and salary. So you remove the position problem. How do you resolve the salary? How did each person decide how much they deserve to get paid?
It's a really interesting question. I think that's a talk all in itself. What does one deserve? There's a few different perspectives, but my thought is always on a project team is thinking about market rate. So having conversations with people about where do they sit from a capability perspective. So with larger organisations, I use what's called a capability framework to have conversations with people about realistically where they are on their career journey and how that ties into pay, but also getting them thinking about what types of skills or experiences that they should be looking for to help them expand their roles, whether it's within your own organisation or their next organisation.
Thank you. Yes. Any more questions? I have a few.
My question regarding future organizational chart, like as AI is taking over lots of jobs, so how does AI fits in organizational chart? That's my question.
AI is a really good example of when we were talking about pulling together the list of tasks. So when you're brainstorming all of the possible things that your organisation does, it's a great opportunity to think about what are the things that could be automated, so we no longer need a person for, and AI would be part of that. So thinking about what can we remove entirely. The other part to that is where are tasks that would be augmented. So we would still have a human doing them, but it would be augmented using AI. So it would be just part of your broader organisational strategy of looking at all the different places where you can get efficiencies.
Sort of empower people, right?
Yeah.
Any more questions?
Thanks for the talk. So say you've done all the work with the organisational design, where do you document it down so it's easy for reference and you can work on it in the future?
So the actual output I recommend as a PowerPoint, so it kind of steps you through the context and tells the story, not just jazz hands, here's a chart. But it's really part of your onboarding process to make sure that as each person joins the organisation, they understand the logic between how different people work together. So it's sort of embedded in your DNA. So the actual output is a PowerPoint deck, but you're embedding those conversations about how do we work together and our ways of working as part of your onboarding, and particularly within your HR practices, that as new roles are designed and recruited for, is that they're checked against that strategy to make sure that they align with the target structure.
Do we have any more questions?
Hey, it's more of a comment actually than a question, but two things that I picked up which I thought were really valuable was the capability, looking and measuring that capability. I think we're doing a disservice when you add up those numbers of those factional roles. You know, there's a huge demographic of people that are looking for part-time work for a number of reasons. So I think that everyone should really consider that. And then the second thing, just around the onboarding, I've seen some really amazing onboarding. I worked at Bernardo's in the UK and they designed an incredible onboarding for ways of working, and that was all logged in Trello. And so anyone that came along just kind of worked through that thing, and it's now being sold throughout government as a model. So just a point on that.
Thank you.
Firstly, a comment, and thank you. I've had the opportunity to work with organisations through multiple different countries, and this sort of approach works. I think there's a big part around culture, and it's important to factor that into everything. My question is, how often would you revisit this exercise as a startup grows, or as your organisation changes, or as technology or regulation changes?
I think there's a few different triggers. Because it's all coming from your value chain, so it's kind of when we sort of think about it as a set of really logical steps, everything's been driven by the value chain. So if there's anything that's changing your value chain, that would be your fundamental trigger for a complete go back to the beginning. Particularly, say you were a product-based business and then you're introducing something that's completely different, you might end up in a situation where you have more than one value chain. And so that's when this exercise gets very complex very quickly. So that's definitely a trigger. The other one would be market forces. So the example that I gave before about just not being able to get cleaners. So pretty much at any chain, but it's usually at the start or at the end is where you'll start to feel that the strategy is not serving you. And the encouragement, I think, is when with organisational charts, I've seen so much is organisations lurch from one side to the other. So they'll have some things that are not working well for them and they'll move to the extreme. So say they were a product-based business, they'll completely switch to being a service-based business and, old chart completely gone. Here comes new chart, we're going to restructure and those types of things. And I think, and I know you've seen it as well, and you've done the maths, you know what it costs in terms of doing a restructure, is it's really thinking about avoid the temptation to move the deck chairs. So when something's not working in terms of your people strategy, a lot of organisations, the knee-jerk reaction is just to do a restructure. And I think Angela touched on culture. It's really thinking about if there's something that's not working in your people strategy, check absolutely everything before you think about doing a restructure, because quite often when you look at the root cause, yes, structure can sometimes get in the way, but there's a lot of things that can be solved through technology, through process and broader conversations about ways of working without having to go through a restructure. There's a heap of data behind it, but effectively whenever you do a restructure, it takes you at least 18 months to get it bedded down. So you think about your fast-growing organisation being in a high state of chaos for that period of time. You've really got to think about whether a restructure is right as you're trying to scale.
Thank you so much. I do have one question. So what if you want to be a product-based but also service-based from your experience? How does that work? Do you actually end up with a great product and great service?
I think that's you got to pick one. So, and it's not that you can't have both. It's just thinking about what is in service of the other. So we're a product-driven business, and the customer service that we provide is in aid of that product. So everything in our organising principles are around products. So products, product roadmaps, releases, shiny things, everyone knowing about what's happening with the product. And that drives how we have conversations, how work gets done. The alternate, in terms of being customer service driven, is customer intimacy in a way that gets really awkward. So a really deep understanding of your customers on what they're trying to do drives all of your decision making. So that's where you'll be looking at things like net promoter scores and other customer metrics and using that to drive your business decisions. So the hard part is you've got to pick one.
Yeah, I think I have to do some thinking.
That's what Founder Sundown is for, isn't it? Any other questions before we wrap up?
Yes, we have one more.
It's a nice one, isn't it, Glenn?
Okay, so you talked about unicorns,
yes,
all right, and lack thereof. So as a startup, my resources are limited. How do I determine what are the 3 or 4 most important things that I want from that person versus hiring a unicorn? Using your data, which I liked, and the forward planning and proactiveness.
I'm going to lean into the unicorn analogy and say, using the data, I think it's to ask the question I got touched on in terms of fractional roles, is to say, rather than getting a unicorn, do I get 3 Shetland ponies? or do I get a thoroughbred, a Shetland, and something in between? I think that's because the natural temptation. I know it's really hard in the market because the orthodoxy says full-time roles, and that's how we end up with unicorns. But really starting to think about, particularly in the startup space, and this is something, as you all know, is near and dear to my heart, is creating more opportunities for part-time work, interesting part-time work, but particularly difficult for recruiters like Glenn, because where do you find them? Because they're not necessarily active in the workforce. So the short answer is, if you do have to do unicorn, is definitely to have it as a priority. So what are the things that this person need to be, like 80-20 rule. It's kind of like 60-40. What's the 60% that this person needs to be good at and the 40 that they can live with? It would be probably my suggestion. If you do have to do an FTE for whatever reason, so a full-time role, is to think about what is their strength going to be, but also to stress test that with, is the other 40% going to kill them, make them cry and leave? There's some things that you can kind of club together and people will do be like, I'm really in for the mission, I'm down for it. But then there's other things where it would just kill their soul. It's like if you gave me number crunching all day long, even if it was 10-20% of the role, I just wouldn't take it. So it's really thinking about what is that 20%? Is it actually going to work for somebody who's got that type of brain? So whether it's developer, introvert, extrovert, you've still got to have some kind of logic to how you design unicorn roles.
Can I just add one more? It's more a comment and a plea to all the startups. Please, again, think about the part-time roles and where you can access really good experience and skills for people that may not be available for a full-time role, but also for technical roles, and I don't mean coding technical, I mean your accountants and people like that. If you don't know that role in detail, please get help in defining on what that role is, because I have seen so many people put the wrong accountants on and pay for it very dearly.
And I think that's to close out that long list that we spoke about. So whether you're using an industry framework or you're using ChatGPT. So for those who are familiar with finance, you'd know that there's actually multiple types of accountants. And what those frameworks and asking ChatGPT will help to call out is these people are not all created equal. So a bookkeeper is not a management accountant, which is not a financial accountant, which is not a CFO. So when you use these industry standard frameworks, what it helps you do is tease out that it's not an accounting bucket. There's actually multiple things, and they're different skills, and they're usually different people. And this is how you end up with all of your weird fractions and percentages. So I think that's us done.
That's us done.
So enjoy I'm like back into MC mode. Which is thanks everyone for joining us. In a fortnight's time, don't forget that we have Maggie coming to talk about her founder journey and talking about the hidden risks of the startup scene. If you haven't already grabbed a coffee, pop out to Joey Zaza's in the foyer. Tell them you're from Morning Startup, and it's courtesy of Purpose Ventures.
Thank you, Erin. That was really, really good and very useful. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.